sights to see, rolling hills or city streets, ocean to ocean and all in between. It's out there just waiting on you and me. So look alive, 'cause while I was waiting for you, paradise is on the other side.
Welcome to Unreasonable, put on by the Jacksonville Civic Council. Interesting interviews from Jacksonville's most iconic entrepreneurs, CEOs, and wonderful success stories. They do things that are unexpected, unreasonably, in order to make their own change. In each episode, you'll meet passionate change makers who are rewriting the rules and daring to dream bigger for their community and our city. My hope that their stories ignite something in you, that you'll be inspired to reimagine what's possible and lead with purpose in your work, your life, and right here in Jacksonville. You're going to really be inspired. Welcome to another episode of Unreasonable. I'm Josh Martino. I'm your host and a member of the Jacksonville Civic Council. Our guest today is Amy Berg, a Jacksonville transplant who brought her talent and wisdom to Jacksonville about 15 years ago after spending a career in civic and cultural leadership with the Aspen Institute and the Better Angels Society, two of the country's most important nonprofit organizations devoted to fostering dialogue and telling America's story. In Jacksonville, Amy's a member of the World Affairs Council, Jacksonville University Board of Trustees, and the Jacksonville Civic Council. Amy, welcome to Unreasonable.
Thank you for having me.
Good to have you here. Well, you grew up in the suburbs of Los Angeles. So from one non-Jax native to another, tell us about your childhood and what it was like growing up in LA during that time.
Well, I had a pretty wonderful, calm, uneventful childhood in Los Angeles. It was in the suburbs and everything was perfect, except for there was very bad air quality at that time in Los Angeles. It was before the Clean Air Act was enacted by the Bush administration, and it was just horrendous. So I had horrible asthma as a child. I wasn't able to participate in sports. And I think that really influenced my life in terms of really caring about the environment and caring about the physical landscape around me. In particular, when I was a little child in LA, I could look out our door and see sheep grazing and farmers and lots of fruit trees.
Wow.
It was beautiful. But by the time I went away to college, it was totally paved over. It was really, Joni Mitchell paved paradise.
Wow.
And so all of that influenced me in terms of wanting to really go into environmental planning, city planning, urban planning, and what makes a community a great place to live in terms of quality of life.
Is there some history behind you? Is there something in your childhood? Is there some moment that inspired you to take your environment and make it your purpose?
I don't know if there was one moment that inspired me, but I've always tried to do things that are in beautiful places with interesting people. Not a bad thing. But I've been very lucky that I've been able to do that. I mean, right out of graduate school, I started working in Santa Barbara, California, another beautiful place. Right. Where I worked in a really interesting area on the offshore oil development at that time that was going on off the coast of California, where we had to collaborate with the oil companies, with the federal government, with the state government, and with the environmentalists, the county government, and everyone had to work together. It was a really interesting time. And after that, I was then promoted to be the planning director in Santa Barbara County. Got married at the time in Santa Barbara, and it wasn't until after I was married that my husband at the time said, I can't live where there aren't seasons. And I said, well, what are seasons? I'd always lived on the West Coast.
73 degrees and sunny.
So that's how I got to Aspen,
right.
Really to save my marriage, because Aspen had seasons, and I got a job there. As eventually the city manager of Aspen, Colorado. So yeah, Carmel, Santa Barbara, Aspen,
not too shabby.
Jacksonville.
Yeah, I'm waiting for Paris to show up in there somewhere. Well, for someone who might not know about the Aspen Institute and the Better Angels Society, tell us about the who, what, and why of both institutions.
Sure. After I worked as the city manager of Aspen for about over 10 years, I was recruited by the Aspen Institute. the Aspen Institute was founded in Aspen, Colorado, as a nonprofit organization centered around civic dialogue. Really, the mission of the Institute was to bring people together from opposite viewpoints and create a forum for them to share ideas, talk, and learn from one another in order to solve problems. The Aspen Institute was also very much a leadership organization based on values. People don't use that word so much anymore, but it's values-based leadership, where you studied and read sort of the great philosophical and intellectual works of Western civilization. And through that process, you learned what your own values were and how to utilize those in leadership, in business.
Would the Institute wait for a crisis to evolve before, saying that's something we need to get involved with? I mean, there's obviously pre-existing issues every day that can be tackled. How on the forefront were the members of the Aspen Institute of assessing a situation and saying, we can help here because we've created this possibility of dialogue?
A little bit of both. I mean, I think that the Aspen Institute today covers almost every policy area you can imagine. So they might be talking about international foreign policy, or they might be talking about the environment, healthcare. I mean, you name it, they have a policy program around that issue. But also the reason I got to know the Aspen Institute was the city of Aspen at the time had very enlightened elected officials who saw that they could utilize the resources of the Aspen Institute to help them with local community problems. So that gets to your point about, did something come up? And
right.
The city leaders would say, hey, Aspen Institute, can you convene a group of stakeholders to sit around a round table with a facilitator and have a process that helps us resolve this issue in our town? And it might have been a lot of it, it's a small town, and a lot of it was things like traffic, affordable housing, design, code, planning codes and that sort of thing, regulations.
Making sure nobody goes over 15 down Main Street.
Right. I always tell people that when I first moved to Aspen, the biggest issue in town was dog poop. So, but you learn a lot from. I learned a lot from working in local city government because, one thing that I learned is the people that were elected officials that I originally admired and still do, but that stuck to their own ideological viewpoint and were not willing to compromise. In the long run, those people didn't really get anything done. And they didn't, if they didn't want to cut down any trees in Aspen, they never succeeded in meeting their agenda because they refused to work with other people. So it really taught me a lesson that I've utilized in the rest of my career, that if you want to get something done, you have to learn how to work with other people, how to collaborate. And that goes back all the way to my interest in collaboration when I was younger.
Well, tell me a little bit more about the Better Angels Society.
So somebody asked me once, why did you move to Jacksonville? And I said, well, love. And they said, well, you really love Jacksonville that much? I said, no, I fell in love. So when my first husband passed away, he had Lou Gehrig's disease. And I was very lucky to meet Gilchrist Berg, who's like fourth generation Jacksonville native. I met him through the Aspen Institute. And so when I married Gilchrist, I knew that he wasn't going to leave Jacksonville, and I would need to move to Jacksonville. And so I started looking for another job that would allow me to live in Jacksonville and do the kind of work that I enjoyed at the Aspen Institute. And at the time, I had been asked by Bobby Stein of Jacksonville to sit on the board of the Better Angels Society. So at my first board meeting, I realized that they were hiring an executive director to run the Better Angels Society and take it to the next level. And it could be remote. It was before COVID. And so I put my name in the hat and got the job to run the Better Angels Society. And that allowed me to be in Jacksonville, but work more on a national level. And the Better Angel Society is a nonprofit that's really dedicated to American history and to having people learn about American history through film, through documentary film. And of course, our biggest filmmaker was Ken Burns, who has done so many brilliant, amazing films throughout the years. And we really helped him raise money for his films, and also through that process did a lot of education and community outreach around the films when they came out. And then we expanded that to say, who's going to be the next little Ken Burns is running around out there, and expanded that to say who the next generation of filmmakers could be, and how could we help facilitate those people who didn't have the same, national reputation as Ken Burns, and didn't have the same opportunities to have their films be seen by more people.
Right.
And so we started a couple of different programs to support those other filmmakers, including a Ken Burns prize for film that puts people on the national level and gets their films seen by more people.
Well, I believe, we were talking earlier, I'm not the greatest reader just because of an Audible thing, but I need a perfect setting to get through even a paragraph of a book. But film is a powerful medium. It provides visual context, which can be, more indelible sometimes than the written word. Is that why the Better Angel Society is so effective? Is because film, especially these days with screens being so prevalent, and how people learn, how people read, how they get their information, being on screen. Is that why film is so impactful?
Absolutely. It's emotional.
Yeah.
It tugs at you feel it. And if you feel it, you're going to remember it and you're going to think about it. Ken always says, I don't think this is a direct quote from him, but he always says, you will never change someone's mind with an argument. You can only change someone's mind with a good story. And he's just a brilliant storyteller.
Yeah, the best.
And his material is very well respected, and it's not ideological. It's very fair and balanced, and tries to present both sides of the history. And so I think it's just incredibly important that these films are supported, and that people see them, and that they're used in the classroom with children to learn about history in a way that is going to change their lives.
Well, you said it, but we live in a time when, often feel like trust and communication, among people with differing ideas and opinions is vanishing. But you worked at the highest level with these organizations that build trust through dialogue and storytelling. Do you see them having a similar or shared mission between the two, dialogue and storytelling?
Absolutely. You can see that there's a little thread in my life where I gravitate towards that kind of dialogue, that storytelling, continual learning, curiosity.
Yeah. And
I just think that's so important in everything we do, and sort of something that is healthy for us, that because it creates community and it allows us to be happier. I think Aristotle said, the definition of happiness is continual learning. And I feel that way.
And a big vision you've had. Recently, you and your husband, Gilchrist, made an incredibly generous donation from the Berg Family Charitable Foundation to support Mayo Clinic's Innovation Exchange, a program launched in 2019 that helps innovations, startups, and entrepreneurs in the healthcare space. Tell us about that work and why it's so important to your family.
It's so interesting because, again, before I even knew Gilchrist, I worked with Ken Burns on a documentary on the history of the Mayo Clinic. And so it's so interesting how all these threads come together. And I think we're just so lucky here in Jacksonville to have the Mayo Clinic in this area, because when you look at how the Mayo Clinic was started and how it evolved over time, it was very much a values-based organization, a nonprofit based on, always putting the patient first. It wasn't a profit-making organization. And to this day, I think that the Mayo Clinic has maintained those values. And even though they've grown so much, they really are impressive in being an organization that supports patient care first above everything else, and also continual innovation in how they work and what they do. So I think Gilchrist has been working for over 7 years with the Mayo Clinic on how to design this innovation exchange to be something that would be very open-ended, and you wouldn't, a lot of the innovation doesn't happen until, somebody actually gives it money and takes it on. But this is to get in at the very beginning of innovation and accepting all sorts of different ideas. I mean, we've seen nurses that have worked in healthcare for years who think of a better way to put in a catheter.
Wow.
And they have that idea, but they don't have the means to take that idea and make it into a new product or a new policy or a new way of doing things. And so the Innovation Exchange takes that little nugget of that nurse and expands it to the entire globe, where people can submit ideas and get help in moving their ideas forward. And they're using AI and all sorts of other tools to make this a very, very powerful tool.
So the through line, it seems like, is you are able to take an idea, a concept, your own or others, and see it to the finish line, or help assist it to the finish line through the help of other leaders, through your own doing. You have this vision and you see it through. And what you're creating now in a completely different space in healthcare are ideas and innovation and entrepreneurial gusto. And you're helping others see their vision. When you say catheter, I mean, how many catheters are placed every single day at Mayo? I mean, it's I don't even know what the number is, but it's high. Something, so routine to become more effective, more patient-friendly. And I'm sure there's far more innovation, but you're able to help these people see these things through to the finish line to create better healthcare.
Absolutely. And I think one of the key words is the word exchange, because it's not a venture capital kind of a thing where you're going to only do something if you can make it work for the Mayo Clinic. They're connecting entrepreneurs and innovators with other people. Oh, so-and-so is doing this in Canada. Let me connect you with them. It may never come back to the Mayo Clinic.
Right.
But it's just a sort of a circular exchange of ideas that will, I think, turn into huge innovation for the world in healthcare. And Mayo has such a great brand, and they also have unbelievable data. And with the forefront of AI, data is king. You got to have a lot of data in order to make it work. And so I think in the realm of healthcare, Mayo is number one on top of that, and it's going to be really interesting and fascinating to watch it grow.
Mayo is definitely one of the reasons Jacksonville's a beacon for healthcare, and it's not just a hospital; it's a research institute. It's a place of innovation. A lot of that because of the work you're doing, and a lot of those things we can point to as a city and say this is why Jacksonville, or one of the reasons Jacksonville is on the cusp of breaking through as a preeminent city in our country, and hopefully one day the world. I know the Civic Council, which you're a part of, like me, has a big vision and strategy to make Jacksonville world-class by 2032. Through the work you've done, through the work you're doing, what makes you think that's possible?
Well, I think Jacksonville is already a great place. So I think we just need to tweak it and make it better. I think creating spaces for community, spaces for engagement, both physical spaces and non-physical spaces for people to get together, and creating a vital, more robust downtown is what sort of the next step for Jacksonville is, creating a place where people can meet and greet and be outside and be inside and share ideas and have that vitality. As a city planner, you learn how to sort of plan a perfect community.
Right.
And Jacksonville is so spread out that when I first moved here, I thought, this place, you can't fix it. But if you start making small small projects and small things, they're all going to add up to what I think is the vitality that will connect this place together.
Yeah, you being a city planner, you're the perfect person to ask these questions. So we often talk about, it's important to bring talent in from outside of Jacksonville. We want businesses. We want people to come here. We want to see our beautiful natural resources, the river, the ocean, how much, green space we have. But I, like you, feel like Jacksonville's already great. It has amazing citizens. It has civic pride. It has talent. How do we get the current talent that's building in Jacksonville to be more engaged, get to the forefront, take leadership positions, take ownership of projects, and really, be part of the journey with people that are coming from outside of Jacksonville?
I think those people are going to be like you. They're going to be people that are going to see the possibilities here and find it exciting. Yeah. And I still like to call Jacksonville the bold new city of the South.
Well, we call this podcast Unreasonable from the George Bernard Shaw quote that reads, "A reasonable man or woman adapts themselves to the world, and the unreasonable one persists to adapt the world to him or herself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man or woman." So how does that apply to you? And tell us a story where you had to be unreasonable in order to affect change.
Oh, dear. Well, I think the unreasonable sort of correlates to courage, right? I think in those, areas of my life where I look back and say maybe I was unreasonable, it was mainly times when I was sort of naive. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I was in over my head. And so when I look back and I think, God, I did that when I was very young. Or I remember when I first went to work for the Aspen Institute, and I was pretty young, and all of these titans of industry and, secretaries of state were there. And I had to speak truth to power about the financial situation at that time of the Aspen Institute. And as a result, I was let go by the president of the Aspen Institute. And then the next day, they fired the president of the Aspen Institute and hired me back.
Wow.
And so that's something that sort of, you think about, why did you do that, Amy? Why did you in your position step out and say, I need to honestly tell you what's going on here financially? It wasn't corruption. It was just, this is the financial situation. We're in bad shape. We need to work on fixing it.
Yeah.
So that's one, example of being unreasonable. I think that, again, when I was really young and I didn't know what I was doing, I was promoted into a management level position. This was Santa Barbara. And I didn't realize that the person I was up against was the head of the union. And I didn't even know what a union was. Never worked with a union.
Right.
So my first staff meeting, 40 people around the table. I said, why don't we go around? Well, introduce yourself and let me know what you're doing. Well, they had all taken a vow of silence as a protest because they wanted their guy to get the job that I had just gotten. And it was horrifying. Ouch. As a new manager. Like, how do you handle that? How do you go around the table and each person just doesn't talk? And so I think over time I was able to, I went home that night and cried. And the next morning I just got up and said, I'm just going to keep going and pretend like that didn't happen. And I won all of those people over.
Right.
So in a way, you have to have the, you earned it, and you have to have the courage to kind of try new things and do that. And I think for me, I was mainly doing it out of ignorance.
But it seems like each time you did receive some sort of validation, right? And that with each one of those experiences where you achieve validation, either from winning those people over or from getting fired and rehired the next day, it probably encouraged you more and more to put yourself out there, to be unreasonable if you had to be, to do what was in your heart and be fearless and not feel like an imposter.
I think so. I think to be authentic and to do that and to try something that you don't think you can do. And that gets back to these young people in Jacksonville. I see a lot of that. I see people here trying things that are entrepreneurial, and they're not sure if they can do it or not, but they're going for it. So.
Yeah, I think that speaks to the heart of this town. Well,
Yeah.
You've certainly validated this podcast from being on today. I really appreciate you being here. As a guest on Unreasonable, we share stories of people who haven't been afraid to pursue ambitious goals, even when they seemed improbable or impractical, and you certainly embody that sentiment. So thank you for being here.
Well, it was fun. Thank you.
All right, and thank you for joining us on this episode of Unreasonable. We'll see you the next time. Thanks for joining us on Unreasonable. Look for us online, follow us on social media, and wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
Ocean